Today we're going to talk about creating a game, the guessing game. Many of you have seen this one before in different classes, but we're going to do it in Python. We're going to use functions. We're going to use a while loop and if-else statements, and I'm going to go through line by line and explain how to do it. And I think we should have some fun. Okay, so you can see here I have the little skeleton. This is how you should start every piece of code, with the top here saying what this is, and you really should have your name, usually the class and the date, and then what this thing does. Okay, so we have our main function, we have our return. We should always have a return when we have a function, and then this piece of code right here tells us the entry point to the script of code. Okay, because we're going to have other functions, and the system needs to know where it should enter the code. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to give the player a choice to even play the game. And the options we're going to give is they're going to type in, they're going to press any key for a yes, so that way it's easy to do this, to play the game. Or they're going to type no to get out. So pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and set up the, we're going to do that in a while loop. And I'll come back and explain the code. Okay, so I created a while loop, and what we're going to do is we're going to set this while loop to true. So that means that the while loop is going to just iterate continuously until something changes, until it sees a break. So we're going to ask the user to input, either hit any key or type yes, whatever they want to do, for it to play the game, or type no for it not to play. So that's what this right here is. Now we need to test this play right away to see, do they want to play the game or not? So we're going to use an if-else statement, because there's only two choices: either they want to play or they don't. So if they want to play, we're going to test for play, and we're going to use the comparison operator here to say, is play the same as no? So did they type in no? And if they did, we're going to say goodbye, and we're going to break the loop, and the game ends. That's it. Nothing happened, which I don't know why they would execute this if that was the case, but maybe, I don't know. So the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to print goodbye, just to say goodbye, and we're going to break. Okay. Now, if they type something else, it's going to drop down to the else part. So we're going to have the else part of the equation. So now we have else, and assuming they want to play, it's going to say, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to play this game, and it's going to execute the game method, which I haven't written yet. It's going to say, okay, if game is false. So if they play the game and the game returns false, we're going to break out of this too. And that's because we want to break out of the loop should the game return false. So this while loop right here is giving the user the option to play the game or not play the game. And if they play the game is going to give them the option to break out of the game itself. So that's what this is all about. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is I need to set up the new function for the game. So that's pretty simple. We're just going to say this, and we'll set up the little skeleton crew here, the little skeleton code. And of course we need our colons. And so now we have the game function, and I'm going to code some in there, and then I'll come back and explain. I wrote some variables, so I'm going to use number, and number is going to equal the computer guess. So the computer is going to use the random, and it's going to choose a range between 1 and 100, and so that's what this one means. It's going to be somewhere between 1 and 100. It's going to randomly select a number, and that number is going to be assigned to the variable number. And then the count is for keeping track of how many guesses the user is going to have. So that's what this is about. And then we're going to have a test for true. This is what we're going to use to break out of the system, out of the game, should the user decide they want to quit the game. So those are our variables. And the next thing we're going to do is we need to create another while loop, because inside of this while loop is where the game is actually going to be played. And here we have to keep track of our counts. So we'll be doing that. And remember, this just means the count is equal to count plus 1. So it's just iterating, it's incrementing by 1 every iteration. And that's what that's all about. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit more code here, and then I'll be back. So what I did here is I wrote guess, and we're going to say that's equal to the input, and the user is going to be prompted to guess a number. So this is the first time the user gets prompted to enter a number. You'll notice that this has to be included inside the while loop, because as the game continues, they have to be offered new guesses. And so that's why it's inside the while loop. Next, we're going to have to use an if-else statement in order to see if the number actually matches the number that the computer selected, or if the number is less than or greater than. So we're going to use an if-else statement to handle that. I'm going to write that code, and then I'll be back. Okay, so this is the chunk of code that was added, and what it means is that while true, we increment the count. We ask the user for a guess. Now, if the guess types in exit, or another case, then the random, well, we're going to go ahead and tell him what the random number was, him or her, and then we're going to set test to false, and we're going to break. Now, false is going to be used right here. We're going to return test here, because remember back in the main method, we're checking to see if the game returns false. Because if they choose to exit the game, we're going to send false back to the main function, and if false is what's returned, then we're going to break out of this while loop. So if they quit the game, they obviously don't want to play it again, so we'll break out of the entire game. So again, this false, test equals false here, should they decide to exit, we pass from the game function to the main function right here, and then it will break from this while loop and they're out. Okay, but other than that, then they're going to play the game. So now we have an else if here. In Python is just called elif, and their number, what they selected, what they entered here. I'm sorry, what they entered as a guess is going to be compared to what the computer selected as a number. If it's correct, of course, we're going to say, yeah, you guessed it, good job, and we're going to give them the count as to how many times it took. And we're going to break. And so we break this while loop. It returns back to the main function, and we're going to ask them if they want to play again. And they might want to play again. I don't know. So if they want to play again, then we'll go through this little operation all over again. However, if the number is less than, if their guess is less than the number, then we're going to say it was too low, try again. Well, if it's not one of these options, then it logically has to be that their guess is greater than the number. And if that's the case, we don't have to test it again because we've already tested it for less than and equal to. So it must be greater than if it's not one of those. And so we don't need to test the final condition. We'll just assume that that's the condition because it logically has to be so. And so we're going to say your guess was too high, try again. And then we're going to pass back to the test, back to this while loop, and then they guess again, and it happens all over again. So the important thing to notice is that the number that the computer selects has to sit outside the while loop, otherwise the computer will continue to assign random numbers. What we want inside the while loop is the user to be able to guess, and then to test their guess over and over again until they're either right or they continue to be wrong. And so that's why the number has to sit outside the while loop and their guesses has to sit inside the while loop. Okay, so that's really about it with this piece of code. This is the entire code. Now, a few things that I want to address, a couple more things I want to address here, is commenting. So when you comment in Python, we use the 3 single quotations for a block code. And so up here we have a block code. And we don't want to use too many comments. It's important to comment your code, but only comment it when it's necessary for understanding. So for example, here I probably want to say handle game choice, and I'm just going to say play or not. All right. Now that's telling us what's going to happen in the main function. Now in the game function here, I do want to say a bit more. I'm going to say generate a number and guess a number. So I want to describe what this game is actually doing right here. Okay. And I sometimes, not often, but sometimes I will go ahead and comment a while loop just so I can tell myself and anyone else that reads the code what this while loop is testing for. And here we're testing the guess against the computer number. Okay, and that's it. Now, so the rule of thumb for commenting, let's just talk about that for a little bit, is use the single quotes for a block comment. You not always, but you might want to comment your main function, especially if the main function your function doesn't explain what's happening. Here, for example, let's just play a game. I could have named this function guessing number game or something, and then I wouldn't have to have this comment. So you do want to name your functions and your variables something that actually has meaning for what that function or variable is doing. And if you do that, then you don't have to comment. For example, this line here, number equal random dot rand range. I wouldn't want to put a comment above it or beside it that says the computer guesses a random number. It's obvious. This is number, and we have the word random here, so we can look at that line of code and we know what it does. But the while loop might not be obvious. I mean, you have to start reading it to say, okay, what is it doing? So that's why I put a comment here saying testing the guess against the computer number. Okay, that's what he's doing here. Okay, so no problem. But so the point is, name your functions and your variables descriptively, so that way we can look at it and know, oh, this is the count. That's what it's doing. This is a test. That's what it's doing. And we don't have to put too many comments. You do want to use comments, but you want to use them when necessary. Always remember to put this right here at the bottom, because this tells the system, the compiler, where to enter our code. Especially if this was more complex and we had several functions, definitely want to have this so that you can throw it to your main function. All right. So the next thing to do is just to run this thing and show you how it works. So I tried to run this and I ran into a couple of errors, and so I want to go ahead and point those out in case you've been copying this code line by line. The first thing, and I should have known this right off the top, but I just forgot to do it, is you have to import random to use random. So let's do that right now. Import random. And the other thing that I missed was I had missed this bracket, this closing bracket right here. When you have your print function, it needs to be in these parentheses, and so I missed this last parentheses right here. So if you're copying my code line for line, I missed the import random, and I missed this right here. Okay, so now let's try this again and see if it'll run this. So when I execute the code, this is what should come up. It's going to say play a game, press any key, yes or no. Well, I'm just going to hit the enter key. Okay, and that was weird. There we go. I'm going to check that. Okay, so I guess random number between 50 and 100. Actually, let me read that again because that was kind of weird. Let's see. There we go. I don't know why it did that. So I just hit the enter key, and I guess random number between 1 and 100. So I'm going to say 50. Guess was too high. Try again. Okay, let's go with 25. Guess was too high. Try again. Okay, I'm going to go 15. Guess was too low. Try again. Let's go 20. Guess was too high. Try again. Let's go 17. Guess was too high. 16. And congratulations, I guessed it in 6 attempts. Okay, and then it says play a game. Do you want to try again? So let's do it again. I'll hit enter key again, and it should take me to a new game. So I'm like, okay, let's play 50 now, and let's see. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. But let's say here I actually want to exit, so I type in exit. It should tell me the random number was 41 and exit the program. And so that's what this should do. I played a game. it asked me, it gave me feedback on my guesses. It finally tells me how many guesses it took. And if I quit the game, and if I want to play again, I should be able to play again with a new number. And if I decide I don't want to play again, I should type in exit, and then should tell me the random number, and then exit the program. So that's what the guessing game should do. So again, this is the bulk of the code right here. Don't forget, you must import random to use it. Don't forget like I did. And remember, you always have to have closing parentheses if you have an open parentheses. So this is how that code's written. Again, pay special attention to the commenting. Only comment when necessary. Try to name your variables and your functions something that's intuitive to what it does. As far as formatting, never put a space between your function, the colons, and the next line of code. So for example, right here, you would not want to do this. That can cause problems for the compiler, or if you move your code to another editor. So don't do that. You do want to keep your code in blocks. So for example, this is all related, so we don't want a space here. Our variables are all related, so it's not space there. But here in our while loop, we want to have we're going to want to have some spaces here because this is all related. And the if-else statements are all related, so we won't do spacing here. So this is just some logic on how to do how to format your code in Python. Is it necessary to do these spaces? No, but it makes your code more readable, and it's easier if someone else has to take over your code. Here you probably wouldn't want to do anything extra. So this is right here pretty much exactly the way you should format your code. Again, this is my preference. It makes readability easier and editing easier. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that, and that concludes this video.